Number 5. The Real Jigsaw Killer. The Saw film franchise revolves around a killer named Jigsaw who kidnaps its victims and traps them in situations he calls games to test their will to live through physical or psychological torture. He typically places them in rooms and leaves tape messages with instructions for them to follow. With that kind of premise, it's really unlikely to happen in real life, except there was really a real-life Jigsaw years before the Saw franchise even began. In the 1990s, David Parker Ray tortured and presumably killed his victims, for no bodies were found, in a $100 homemade torture chamber he calls Toy Box. This torture chamber contains whips, chains, pulleys, straps and clamps, leg spreader bars, and saws that he calls his friends. He terrorized and tortured women with these tools along with his accomplices, and he even has diagrams he made himself showing different ways and techniques of inflicting pain. He would also leave tape messages of himself for his victims to listen to after they awaken, much like in the Saw films. Ray was only caught when his victim, Cynthia Vigil, escaped after being kidnapped and being tortured for 3 days. She grabbed the keys when Ray's helper left it on the table. The similarities are really striking between the two, but the creators of Saw, James Wan and Leigh Whannell, said the similarities are totally coincidental. Number 4. Surgeon deliberately mangled patients. You would think that movies like Dr. Giggles, a movie about ripping out patients' hearts, or The Doctor's Experiment, a movie where a doctor injects his patients with monkey gland serum that turns them into apes, is unlikely, if not impossible, to happen in real life. Well, something similar happened in 1978. Glenn Tucker, a once renowned plastic surgeon, inflicted horrifying injuries to his patients. One of his patients, named Jan Lehman, consulted with Dr. Tucker after breaking her nose during a cartwheel. Tucker examined it and said it would require surgery. 2 months after the surgery, Lehman awoke to a severe pain in her nasal cavity, and Tucker suggested to have a second surgery. This time, she awoke in a room with no nurse nor hospital staff, with Tucker ripping out the stitches of her nose with his bare hands. She later found out that the doctor left a piece of gauze in her nose, causing severe infection. Her nasal cartilage was so mangled that it later collapsed. After facing 13 malpractice suits, Tucker faked his death in a canoe incident. It was later discovered that he was living in Florida along with his wife. In 2011, Tucker killed his wife and their cat and committed suicide. Number 3. People Can Lick Too. In the 1997 horror anthology, Campfire Tales, there was a story about a 12-year-old girl named Amanda who was left in the care of her sister. Her sister left her to meet with her boyfriend and was left alone in the house with her dog Odin. Amanda told her chatmate Jessica her situation. Unbeknownst to her, Jessica was actually an adult man, and Jessica stalked her in her house. Good thing there was Odin lying under her bed, reassuring her periodically by giving her hand an encouraging lick. Amanda later woke up to noises downstairs. She investigated but found nothing, so she returned to her bed. Upon returning, she reached her hand down for Odin to lick. She then looked up into the mirror and saw the words, "People can lick too." By that time, Odin was dead. The story is based on an old urban legend and was spread to many campuses and internet sites. The story became true on March 2015. A 61-year-old woman was searching for her cats when she reached under her bed. Instead of touching a soft fluffy fur, she felt she had touched a human skin. The burglar was hiding under her bed. This caused the man to sprint from home and jump a fence before being captured by the police. Number 2. Phone Calls from the Dead. In the original Twilight Zone episode titled Long Distance Call, Grandma gave his grandson Billy a toy phone before she died. Billy started to talk to his grandma after her funeral. It would be known later that his grandma wanted Billy to kill himself to be with her. The dead communicating through phone isn't unique to films and TV shows. In September of 2008, a Metrolink commuter train collided head-on with a freight train. 25 people died and 135 others were injured. One of its passengers was Charles Peck. His body wasn't found in the wreckage, so when the family started getting calls from him, they began to hope that he survived. But there was only static on the other line. Over a 12-hour period, the family received 35 calls, and when they tried calling the number back, they were sent to his voicemail. Rescue workers attempted to trace the phone signal. Later, they learned that Charles died on impact in the crash, and the phone was never recovered, as the calls coming from it stopped an hour earlier before his body was located. Number 1. Man with Suicide Victim's Heart. In the movie Body Bags, Mark Hamill is a baseball player who loses an eye in a car accident. After receiving a transplant from a serial killer, his personality starts to take him over, and he eventually does what the killer does. Apparently, life does imitate art. A heart transplant recipient who married the former wife of the heart donor committed suicide the same way the donor did. Sonny Graham is the recipient of the heart of Terry Cody, a 33-year-old man who committed suicide by shooting himself in the head. After a successful operation, Sonny contacted Mr. Cody's family to thank them. He began writing to Mr. Cody's widow, and soon they fell in love. They married in 2004. Graham said that he felt an instant and unusual attachment to the donor's widow, and said that he felt like he had known her for years. 4 years after getting married, tragedy has struck again. This time, Mr. Graham killed himself with a shotgun, similar to what happened to his wife's ex-husband. According to scientists, there are 70 documented cases of patients taking on some of the personality traits of the organ donors, leading them to hypothesize the body itself is capable of storing memories.